Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
Doing great, Jamie. I've just been enjoying all the great games lately. Just finished Jedi Survivor, and well, I'll have my thoughts on that in a little bit. But I come back to Twitter, and there's a great disturbance in the Force. It seems like a few things happened in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, Logan's been AFK from Twitter for a week and a half, 2 weeks. And
Yeah,
in
a couple weeks.
yeah,
Yeah.
in that time, it all went to hell online. And the thing is, it's all overreactions in my opinion, but we'll talk about that. And there's a lot of today's topics that are based around stuff that happened today. But I mean, honestly, gaming, I've been enjoying it. I've been going through Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which I'll talk about later in the show when we get to that topic. I finished Hi-Fi Rush, finally. That game was incredible. Like,
Amazing
I
game.
do I do this weird thing with video games, and people can tell by how I post on Twitter that I take breaks off almost every single game I play. Doesn't matter how much I'm enjoying it. I'll take a week off or a month. Like, so I put it like this: when Final Fantasy X released on the PlayStation 2, it took me 3 years to finish it. Like, that's how much I have breaks with video games and always have done. I played The Witcher 3 over the course of 2 years.
I mean, that game's a juggernaut, so I get that one.
Yeah, yeah, and plus that has the side content that to like let it last that long. But other than that, basically playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition again.
Of course.
But yeah, outside of that, I haven't really been playing much. I just started that indie game, which is now available in Xbox Game Pass. The Last Case of Benedict Fox. It's actually pretty cool. It's a Metroidvania. I think if people want a very chill Metroidvania, people should play it because it has a difficulty slider, but you can also turn on invincibility and it doesn't actually affect achievements. So I think a lot of people will be speedrunning that game. But yeah, very cool game. Other than Jedi Fallen Order, have you been playing anything else, Logan?
Yeah, I've been absolutely hooked on Ghostwire Tokyo. Like, I know I'm a little late to the party on that one, but my goodness, I don't understand how this game didn't score that great. Like, I know we're gonna jump into scoring in a little bit with some of our topics, but it's just another one of those games. It's like I'm experiencing something different, I guess. Because I'm not having bugs in this. I'm not having performance issues. I found the story really fascinating. I love the Japanese folklore and, mysticism and tales with the yokai, the oni, the basically Doctor Strange abilities. And, like, instead of a shotgun, machine gun, and stuff like Doom, you're like finger guns going pew 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 with like magic, and it's so cool. And I love the parkour and the soaring around, and it's something about yanking those cores out of the enemies just feels so gratifyingly powerful. I'm really loving it.
Yeah, like I'm a few hours into Ghostwire Tokyo, when it came to Game Pass and Xbox, and I'm really enjoying it. Again, that's another one of those titles I took a break from. I'll get back to it soon. But I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I like its open world. It's very vertical. The fact that you can float in between buildings is really cool. It is basically finger guns of the game, but it's fun. But that game's like they've had 4 million players in that game, and I thought it would be a lot higher because it was exclusive on PlayStation for a year. It was also on PC, and I don't know, maybe it just didn't attract the audience because it was first person. I don't know, but really cool game from what I've played, and I think I've talked about this in the past. Like, we need more games to just change things up a bit. Like, every first person shooter is guns, right? Every first person shooter for the longest time has been guns. And I think developers maybe now are just starting to experiment with things like magic because that's what Ghostwire Tokyo is. It's a first person shooter, but with magic. In July there's Immortals of Avum coming out. That is a first person shooter solely aimed at people that like Call of Duty campaigns, but it's magic. And I just think developers need to experiment more. Obviously, they're not going to sell as well as like a military first person shooter, but we need change. Like gaming's stagnant in my opinion. Every so often we have like an outlier, like a gold gem, like a High Five Rush or a Ghostwire Tokyo, just something different. And I feel like like Logan, do you agree with me or do you feel different? Like a lot of AAA gaming is extremely safe.
Oh, 100%. Like, to be honest, I've lost count of how many, Nazis, communists, other things have, been enemies in games over the years. It's like they just keep revisiting these old hits over and over and over and over again. It's like, they're fun and they're good and there's a reason that the formula works, but at a certain point, you're like, all right, now let's diversify some things up. Let's have something besides this. Oh, there's this, you know, new take on the regime is rising up and we have to deal with this, or let's have this controversy over here and we're gonna jump into that. It's like this is different and fun and like I love FPS games, really do, but they do get a little stale when it's like the same enemies over and over again, especially in the same time periods. Like it was something a little different.
Yeah. I mean, like I love first person shooters. Like that is my go-to relaxing game. I like playing Call of Duty campaigns, Battlefield campaigns when they used to be good and actually include them in the game. Halo, I love Halo campaigns. But just to have something different, it feels fresh. Um but I think it's time to get into the main topics because we have a lot to talk about today, and one of which I don't know if you've seen, Logan, and I think a lot of people really need to draw attention to this. A bunch of Ubisoft games just start being delisted from Xbox Live without any warning. Mainly original Xbox and Xbox 360 titles. So I
That's
think
concerning.
yeah, so basically every Splinter Cell game on the original Xbox outside of Chaos Theory is delisted, as well as Prince of Persia, the one with the cell shading, is no longer
Mhm.
available on Xbox Live. And I think the other one, the Forgotten Sands, is also delisted as well. And we've been given no reason at all, which is weird because when it comes to things like EA, they delisted I should say three Battlefield games last month. Well, we got heads up like a month and a half in advance, but for Ubisoft, we've heard nothing, and that's kind of worrying.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not a fan of that whole sneaking out the back door kind of mentality. About if you're gonna, make an unpopular change like that or make it unavailable for folks, give them a heads up so they can buy them. Like I know Splinter Cells have been on sale for ages, like all the time they're on sale, and I've already gotten them all digitally and physically, thankfully. But you know, not everybody has the foresight or the idea to know that if a game's showing up on sale all the time, maybe that means I need to buy it because it's about to get delisted. Like most people shouldn't have to think that way. I missed out on getting Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2 remasters because I just assumed I'd be on sale again. And lo and behold, they yanked it, and there have been several other games like that. We go back to the licensing thing all the time. There has got to be a better way to preserve games and make them forever for sale versus what we got now. Because music, games, all these other things, or music, movies, shows, all these other things are forever for sale. You don't see Godfather or Return of the Jedi or Alien or Tremors or you know Friends, whatever, just disappearing in a snap of a finger and you can never buy them again. They make sure those suckers stay up and available and they're enduring. Surely, in the year 2023, we can be smart enough to come up with a method to keep these things available. I mean, surely. I mean, I'm not crazy, am I?
I mean, we've talked about this before, and like I hate the fact that people can't buy like licensed games. Like every time I talk about backwards compatibility, I get at least one or two people asking me like, "Hey, is this like particular game like I think it's like NCAA football or something in the US? Like, is that backwards compatible?" And like I always have to say,
No, no, no,
yeah,
no.
no, and like even as a Brit, I know for a fact that is definitely not backwards compatible. The Transformers games, like everyone talks how good those Transformers games. I have them wrapped, ready to play, because I'm just hoping, just hoping that Microsoft will get some deal worked out and we can get a bunch of BC games. But like, I'm sick and tired of this happening. Quantum Break got delisted for it was only like 2 weeks. Because of some, I think it was because of some music. It's back on Xbox now. It's also on Game Pass. They got that resolved quick. That's the one thing about Remedy, right? They will resolve their license issues within weeks. They did the same thing with Alan Wake. They did the same with Quantum Break. So I love Remedy for keeping on top of that stuff. But like all the time, we see games get delisted. Like, do you know Batman Arkham Origins isn't available on Xbox to buy? Simply because of
Only physically.
yeah, only physically it's BC because of one song, I believe. One song from like the 50s or 60s. Like that is stupid. And by the way, I'm gonna be very outraged throughout this show because of um let's say certain people and communities just going over the top with clickbait, and it's driving me mental. But the whole BC thing, like these license issues, really do my head in. There's a fantastic open world game on 360 called The Saboteur. It's a open World War II game, and it's set in Paris. It's like GTA meets Assassin's Creed, and it's an amazing game. But most people will never get to play it because it's not backwards compatible because of like 3 songs. Like, it's stupid. And I hear this is going to continue happening, and a lot of people think, oh, well, my favorite game's safe. We don't know that. A lot of games have licensed music. Like, look at Forza, right? They have to license cars like every other year. There's a bunch of licensed songs in there, and we know, was it every 3 years Forza Horizon gets delisted? You know?
Yeah, I remember the first one was yanked, the second one was yanked, the third one I think has recently been yanked. So before too long, the fourth one will inevitably be
Yeah,
yanked.
and with that, I kind of understand because car companies don't want like car damage in games and photos and all that stuff. It's all over the place. But like licensing for games, there needs to be some change because Phil Spencer in the past has mentioned like game preservation is important, but these licenses just stop that crap from happening. Just a bit of a rant, but I do hope that Ubisoft delisting these games is pointing towards some kind of collections, because some people mentioned this to me that did Ubisoft delist them because of their own service? But the truth is, Ubisoft doesn't put BC games in their service on Xbox, so I can't see that being the issue. But my only hope is that with Ubisoft having a pretty bad year and a half, that they plan on doing a bunch of collections for things like maybe Hawks, Splinter Cell, Prince of Persia, because they would sell. But like the fact that they're just being delisted is terrible. I'm not sure if they're available on PC still, but like it's ridiculous. I can't stand all this delisting bullcrap. Anyway, we'll move on. Um, you know, we've got so much to talk about in this show. We're literally only gonna be able to cover like half the topics. um, you know what? Let's talk about Redfall now because I have a lot of stuff to say later in the show on very particular topics. So Redfall. Now, every time I've talked about Redfall, I've referred to it as a Far Cry style game. I've referred to it as an immersive sim because that's what it's been billed as. It's been advertised as a Far Cry style game with immersive sim elements. And every time I've talked about this, people get enraged, like saying, like, where'd you get the Far Cry thing from? The developers. Where'd you get the immersive thing from? The bloody developers. And this has gone on for months and months and months, and I've been really looking forward towards Redfall. And if people know me, they know I don't get angry about gaming. Well, let's considering how I'm going to go off today. Let me rephrase that.
Square.
Yeah, I mean, I have words about Square later on as well, but like, when it comes to games, like I try not to get angry because we're meant to enjoy them, right? So while I do get all pissy and angry at Square Enix, at the end of the day, when it comes to the games themselves, I'm very chill, right? But like, I was looking forward towards Redfall, and that the game came out at midnight in the UK. I started the game, I played for a few hours, and honestly, the game was a little bit disappointing. But here's the thing: that doesn't mean the game's bad. Like, I had the game built up as this Far Cry style game with immersive sim elements. It's not really that. And the thing is, in my feed, there's a lot of people enjoying the game. And I think in time, that game is going to be bloody amazing because of what it's trying to do. But, like, when it comes to that game, I'm just putting it on the back burner for a bit. But the amount of outrage and crying and people trying to denounce this game from even existing, and, like, people have no memory whatsoever when it comes to gaming. So, Logan, let's rewind the clock back a month or so, right? Where Redfall previews were going out into the wild, right? Do you know all the previews were pretty much positive? They were so positive to the fact that some PlayStation-centric channels made videos about how Xbox cancelled the PlayStation versions of Redfall. They were upset. Some of those people actually deleted the videos of themselves being dramatic, crying about Redfall ports, right? People can remember this. But now that the game has negative reviews, people are denouncing that the fact that there were positive previews, right? People are just pretending that those positive previews didn't exist. And now the game is bad. Now the game is the worst thing ever, and people lost their minds over it. It's a low-scoring game for Xbox, when every game from Xbox in the past year has been performing well. They haven't had many releases, but when it comes to things like Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Age of Empires on 2 for the Xbox, have all been extremely well received. Flight Sim for Xbox, extremely well received. Forza Horizon 5, greatly received. Grounded, not really received that well at launch, but now people love the game. Has a campaign and all that stuff. So people's like opinion is all over the place. And every time I talk about Redfall now, people say, Jamie, I'm concerned because of Starfield. I'm concerned about Starfield because of Redfall. And it's like, where the... Look, I try not to have swearing on the channel because it's how you stay monetized and in YouTube's graces. I'm trying not to swear today. But, like, why are people doing this? For the past 2 years, every time I talk about Starfield, do you know I always get at least one reply going, I'm concerned because of Cyberpunk. A different game made by a different developer, by a different publisher, and I feel like I've taken crazy pills. Because now people are doing the same thing with Redfall. I'm concerned about Starfield because of Redfall. And it's driving me absolutely bonkers. Like, Logan, like, please tell me, like, am I going nuts? Because, like, look, the game hasn't been received well. But people are acting like it's the end of the world. People are acting like Microsoft's had this long string of games that haven't been received well. It's like it's one game that hasn't lived up to a lot of people's standards. Get over it. Like,
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on Redfall. Like you, I was looking forward to it. I even bought back a steelbook thing, and I figured, oh, I'll buy the game digitally later. And played it for a little bit, and there aren't too many games I just quit and get frustrated with because it's just janky or the experience is just not the way I want it to be. And for some reason, the control scheme, some of the other stuff, it just, I wasn't jiving with it. I'm gonna revisit it when there's updates. I think this is the game that has the potential to bounce back, like a No Man's Sky or Sea of Thieves. I know there's a big roadmap for the game. The companies behind it fully, they're not abandoning this game. They don't want it to just die. They've put it out there, even though it's been received less than wonderfully. They're like, look, we've made this game. Our name's on it. Let's make the best of it we can going forward. And I really hope they succeed because it's the type of game I would love to enjoy. You got vampires, you've got cool powers, you got this cool, Bay Area, lighthouse town, and these cultists and these cool like different guns and abilities and fighting styles. It seems like a lot of fun, but on the surface, but what I experienced was not wonderful. I'll just put it that way. Hopefully they get it fixed. I think they will. Mainly, my biggest disappointment with it is like the way it was advertised and put forward, the way it was going to be, is not what I ended up getting. That is my biggest thing. Not saying that they deceived people or put out fake stuff. Just whatever reason, the way it was portrayed is not how it came off to me. Like the whole immersive sim, like in my experience, it wasn't very immersive. And from other people I've seen their experiences, but maybe there's more in there than I've seen so far. I hope so. And the whole dropping 30 FPS, it just in a little press release and kind of move along. These aren't the droids you're looking for. We don't want to talk about this. And then the apparently like some content creators got a vertical slice that was different than what the game ended up actually being, according to some folks out there. That seems really weird to me. And I think mainly it's the fact that it all blew up is because of the stupid CMA thing that happened to happen the same week. Had that news happened like a few weeks earlier, or a month earlier, or later, or whatever, I don't think the reaction would have been as bad. I think it's because we had been sitting pins and needles for 18 months waiting on this stupid deal to happen or not. And they drag it out. They keep making it go back and forth like, is it going to happen? Is it not? Then lo and behold, they go, no. And then right after that, it's like, well, at least we got Redfall to look forward to. And then you put in Redfall, you're like, oh, okay. This isn't what I wanted. This is not great. And so you get that on top of that, on top of the hate fetish about Starfield and anything Xbox related, and turning Phil's words about anything into what they aren't, period. Like, it is impressive the amount of word sorcery I see online involving his comments in particular. For people to twist and turn and come up with crazy ideas based off of things that are said that aren't accurate at all. It's been a doozy of a couple weeks, and um, I wish Redfall well. I'm gonna revisit it, but I understand the disappointment with it. Is it Xbox is dead? 6 feet under. Blow it up, sell the company. Phil needs to be fired immediately. We need to, bring back Matrick. All this crap I've been seeing. Absolutely not. It's just, it's a poorly received game at a very bad time. That's it.
As you were saying that, another headline just went across my feed, right? And it's, why won't Xbox's big game problem go away? I shouldn't be shocked at this point because, like, look, the media this past week has been ridiculous, right? I was going to mention this later in the show, but I'm bundling it with this topic. So I think a lot of people have seen this, and we can't talk about what was in the image in certain words on the show, but I think people know what I'm talking about. So there's a certain, how should I put it, journalist from Kotaku who recently got angry at Nintendo because they didn't get a review code for the new Zelda game, right? Because
I saw that.
Kotaku has continuously done Nintendo over wrong, right? So Nintendo's been in the right? So Metroid Dread came out, and Kotaku literally that day put out an article saying how you can get the game illegally. Then like a few months go by and they just start rehashing the same content, retweeting their own posts about that stuff, and it's like, you do not do that. If you want to stay in that company's good graces, you do not do that crap, right? So then they start posting actual spoilers for the new Zelda game before anyone's played it, and I'm just thinking they are crazy. That stuff should not even be allowed. But Kotaku just keeps trying to get away with this stuff, and basically someone from Kotaku made this kind of a joke and innuendo and assumption that basically pointed Kotaku not being allowed a review code for Tears of the Kingdom is as bad as things that happened in World War II. Like, what on earth were they thinking? And this person in the past has been extremely one-sided. So basically, I put out a post the other day on about how in 2014 Microsoft added the ability for you to play media files off a hard drive, and Kotaku listed it as the Xbox One now lets you play pirated movies. And then a year later, the PlayStation 4 got the exact same feature, and the same dude put out an article saying the PlayStation 4 now lets you watch media files. So it was the same story portrayed in two different ways, right? And this past week with the whole CMA thing, they taken the whole CMA thing with the Redfall stuff, and they making it seem like it's the downfall of Xbox, right? And someone replied to me last night, I never really thought about this, like, if Nintendo can recover from the Wii U, why do people think Microsoft's going to fail the Xbox over Redfall? And that, like, my mind's eye kind of opened up to that, and I thought, they do have a point. Like, people are just overreacting. Like, Redfall, like, there's people in my feed that are loving Redfall, right? And eventually, I'm going to get back to it, because I think eventually it's going to be a way better game. But, honestly, in my opinion, bit disappointing. But that's the thing. I'm not going to get angry about it. I don't really get angry about games and stuff. And, like, this past week, people have just been way over the top. People are losing their minds. Like, have people forgotten previous generations? Have people forgotten how, the PlayStation 3 came out without Rumble? Remember how the controller didn't have Rumble? And PlayStation said that they didn't put Rumble in the controller because it's a last generation feature. The truth is, they didn't want to license out the technology, right? And then, was it a year later or something, the DualShock came out and it had Rumble, and that was a big thing back then. They got past it. And then in 2011, Sony was hacked, and they didn't tell people for 2 weeks. People's personal information was floating out in the wild for 2 weeks and weren't told anything. And then eventually Sony apologized. PSN was down for an entire month in a time when they launched multiplayer games, right? SOCOM, and it was forgiven. It was forgiven almost instantly because everyone got 2 crappy games off PSN. PlayStation recovered. And now people are acting like Redfall, getting bad review scores, is the worst thing in gaming ever. And I have to say, that is fucking stupid. Right? I'm trying not to swear on this channel, but wow. Like, why are people acting like this? Like there's so much to enjoy in gaming right now, and people are losing it over Redfall. Like, remember, two months ago, Hi-Fi Rush came out, received extremely well. People start port begging it, but now Redfall came out, didn't do that well, and what do you know? It's the end of the world. What the hell? Like, what the hell's going on? Like, are people just forgetting things all of a sudden? Are people, like, I've been a fan of Xbox for like 20 plus years, ever since it first came out. Right? I've gamed all my life, and I've noticed this consistent thing for 20 years where people want the Xbox as a brand to go away. Oh, couldn't Xbox go third party? That's always brought up. Like, Logan, you remember this, right? With the original Xbox, moving on to the 360, people brought it up. During the 360 generation with the Red Ring of Death, people brought it up. Towards the end of the generation, people brought it up. But the Xbox One, people brought it up. And then 20 years later, they're still here. And people just want gamers to forget about this stuff. Like, Logan, you can remember all this, right?
Yeah, like, And point blank, like the Wii, like this kind of ties into some of Phil's comments, and we'll get into that later. But about the whole, great games, people wouldn't come for this or this, and he has a really good point about that because look at the Wii U. It had some really good games on it, but the console itself just wasn't it, and it didn't sell well. And Nintendo plummeted during that era, but then they bounced back with the Switch, and they're doing better than ever. And if Xbox didn't become a third party after the absolute cluster cluck disaster of the Xbox One, then they are not going to become third party because some pundits decided that have an Xbox hate fetish and they need to just disappear. The brand needs to go away, just vanish. Like, no, it's not gonna happen that way. Like, if they didn't do it during the debacle that was Xbox One, they are not gonna go away simply because a regulatory body said you can't purchase this publisher, and a vampire game did not perform particularly great at launch. They are not going to abandon a ecosystem, player base, fan base, business, a core tentpole business of Microsoft now. Like Phil has a seat at the execs table. Like not just he's got a little office and room and they're part of Microsoft. Like they are a tentpole of Microsoft now. If they were given the green light to spend $70 billion plus all the, I assume, millions of dollars they're doing in legal fees to expand their gaming portfolio, they're not just going to go, oh, shucks, I guess we can't succeed anymore. Everybody's telling us we fail, we suck, we're not allowed to do this or this. I guess we're just going to go home and cry and not do anything. No, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I mean, before we continue with the topic, we have the first super chat of the night by Nick W for $9.99. It said, "Not every game is going to be a masterpiece," and you're right. Like, I think people put way too much weight on all these games. Like, Nick W is right. Like, every single game that comes out, people are predicting what its Metascore is going to be, and if it doesn't reach that, it's an instant failure. Like, I hate the fact that, like, I've seen games rated like an 8 out of 10 get called trash. And like I don't even think like 7 out of 10 is a bad game. Like I think like a bad game's like a 4. Like I put it like this. There's a game I played in, I think it was like 2005. It was for the original Xbox, GameCube, and PlayStation 2. It was called Prisoner of War. You had to escape multiple different prisons in World War II. It was an amazing game, right? And I loved that game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And I only found out not long ago that it's like rated like 60 on Metacritic, but we've never had a game like that since. It's basically reverse Hitman. You get given a scenario, a bunch of different tools, escape the prison. And it's an incredible game. And I don't really care that it scored like a 60 on Metacritic. I don't care. But now people need every game to perform 90s, high 80s, and needs to have that green thing on Metacritic. And I don't really care about Metacritic. Like, I'm one of the few people in this community that have a critic review on Metacritic, and I regret the score I gave it. I gave a game a 7, I think it was a 7.5 out of 10, and I felt horrible because I know for a fact that the developer was kind of, annoyed by it, and it was like a small indie game. This was like years ago for Xbox, Xbox Mad. But Nick W is right. Like, there's this huge weight on every game to be great. And, like, Redfall was advertised as this Far Cry style game with immersive sim elements. And, like, even Jez from Windows Central mentioned it recently. Like, where's the immersive sim elements? That doesn't mean it's a bad game if there's no immersive sim elements. But if I'm told a chicken sandwich is a chicken sandwich, I expect a chicken sandwich. Like, I don't understand the marketing behind that game. But eventually, that game might end up being incredible. Look what happened with No Man's Sky. That game was nothing like what was advertised, and now they went above and beyond, and that game doesn't even resemble the thing that it launched as. Grounded launched in early access. It's a completely different game now. Sea of Thieves has been going on for, 7 years? 8 years or something like that? And it's getting content consistently because the player base keeps getting bigger and they keep coming back. And people are just needing every game to be good. And the thing is, I love, like, after answer this, Shiznoli in the chat said the game is very immersive. Immersive sim does not mean immersive. Immersive sim is kind of like, I'm trying to think how to put this. Right, so a game being immersive is like, let's say Red Dead Redemption 2. Right, I'm sure everyone's played it. It's very immersive, how you're out in the open, you can hear the birds, chittering away to each other, and it's very immersive because the ambient noise, everything's great. An immersive sim is a game that provides you many different options to get through various different scenarios. So things like Deus Ex, right? You can interact with different ways to get through the environment. You can crawl through, fire ducts and get through buildings different ways. Things like that. Logan, you know what I mean, right? That you've played immersive sims before.
Oh, 100%. Like, and I think that is why so many people are disappointed with this game in particular, is because it's an arcane game, and I'm glad that they tried something different. But when you say it's going to be immersive, like, people are thinking, like, okay, this is going to be kind of vampire-y take mixed, with Far Cry mixed with, like, Dishonored or Prey. Like, in Prey, you had all these abilities and ways you could get through environments. Like, I could hack turrets and have them go off on the mimics, or I could turn myself into a coffee cup to fit in through a tight gap, and then respawn back as a normal person once I'm in the room. Or I could find a sticky note in some locker on some completely different level of the space station and travel across the space station to some random computer terminal that's related to it and type in the password I found and I get something. Like, that is immersive sim to me.
Yeah, like I'll use Deus Ex Mankind Divided for an example, right? So to get to the last boss, you can either go through a bunch of corridors, defeating a bunch of enemies, or you can crawl through a bunch of air ducts to get to the boss area, right? And then the boss fight is actually really hard. However, there's a secret way to get to the boss, which most people don't even know about. If you get into the office near the boss room and you search through one of the bags, you can find something called a kill switch, right? And bear in mind, the boss is cybernetic. So if you find the kill switch and enter the boss room with the kill switch, you can press one button to end the boss fight. Right, that's an immersive sim. So there's a difference between a game being immersive and an immersive sim. Immersive sim is a genre, and it's something we don't really see a lot of. Like, outside of Dishonored, Prey, Deus Ex, we don't really see them that often. But we do have a millions of, immersive games. Like, Skyrim is immersive. It's not an immersive sim. Red Dead Redemption 2, I talk about that game night and day. It's immersive as hell. It's not an immersive sim. But I think that's an easy thing for people to get mixed up with because we don't get them that often. And I think that's one of the reasons why me and Logan were, like, disappointed by that. It's one of the reasons why I was disappointed with a bunch of games that say that the immersive sims. But, Redfall, I think it's going to be one of those games that 6 months from now, a year from now, that's going to be bloody incredible. Because the thing I loved about the open world in Redfall, from what I played, it wasn't bloated. It was a very, how should I put it, realistic open world environment. Like, that's how I imagine that type of area would be in the US, like in the middle of nowhere, seaside town, and it just seemed very lived in, very realistic. I did like the fact that, like, there were enemies that weren't just vampires. There's humans as well. And, I think Arcane can make that into a great game. I just think there was a huge overreaction about it. Like, people are really hating on that game, which is sad. Like, people shouldn't hate on any of these games. Like, developers, like, I've seen developers being attacked this past week just because they made the game. Like, if it's not for you, don't play it, but don't attack developers. Be better than that, Anyway, we'll move on. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on? Because we've got a lot to cover today.
No, just one last thing on it. Like you mentioned, attacking devs. Like I won't say who it was, but I know one of the devs from, uh, you know, Redfall was basically she put out there like that she was incredibly disappointed to see that people that she admired and people in the industry and other studios, writers, whatever people were delighting in the not stellar launch and were gleeful in watching it crash and burn and its demise, or like happy it's not what it had hoped it would be up front because it's an Xbox related game basically, and how she was incredibly disappointed and hurt by that. And I agree. I mean, it is so weird. It's like if a game's on a PlayStation or a Nintendo or an Xbox, like like enjoy your games on your platform if you like them, but don't just adamantly and openly root for the failure and just crash and burn of something just because it's not your favorite or it's not on your console of choice. It's just petty and gross and just unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean it's not healthy, and we've seen it a lot. Like developers will get attacked online over games constantly. Unfortunately, I see it on a weekly basis. It's one of the main reasons why you don't see a lot of developers from games like Rockstar. Like you'll barely see any developers from like GTA Online or GTA on Twitter, because like they will get hounded constantly. And with a game like this that's getting negative reception, and I don't even think its reception's deserved. Like it's way too much. And I don't understand how all the previews were good and the reviews were bad. That's what I don't get. Like, if people are wondering what I'm talking about, go to Google, search Redfall previews reset error. There's an entire page of positive previews, but when the reviews came out, they were negative. Even some of the same outlets. So it's like, how was the preview build better than the game? Otherwise, the game would be better. Like it makes no sense. But I do think the reaction was over the top. Like, and plus, I'm going to go back to Redfall. If the game was genuinely bad, I wouldn't be doing that. I don't waste my time with games I consider bad. That's just the truth. Anyway, before we move on, if anyone's enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Hit that bell for notifications, all that stuff. Super chats are live if you want anything read out and all that stuff. Anyway, we'll move on. Before we get into the really big topics, we got a new gameplay trailer last week for Armored Core 6. Fires of Rubicon. Now, this is a new game by From Software. They made, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and I have to say, it's one of the best gameplay trailers I've ever seen. Like, it. By the way, Logan, did you watch it?
I have not seen that. That's something I did miss.
Right, well, Armored Core was always this very clunky game. Like, that was part of its charm back in the day. And plus, like, when I started playing Armored Core, it was on the original PlayStation. It was a very long time ago. And what they were doing back on the original PlayStation was impressive. And then I think the first Armored Core on Xbox was 2009, I think. There's been a couple on Xbox, but the gameplay trailer's out. It's about like 2.5 minutes long. It looks incredible, and they have an interview up on xboxwire.com, and basically they said everything I wanted to hear. They want to take that Elden Ring polish, that Elden Ring, that thing that makes Elden Ring what makes it so special, and apply it to something like fighting mechs with big mechs. And it looks like it's going to be the game people have been wanting for a decade, because we haven't had an Armored Core for so long. A lot of people have told me, or like wondered, why is it cross-generation? It's because it's been in development for like 5 years. It was always planned as a cross-generation game. Obviously, if you play it on an Xbox Series console or PlayStation 5, you're going to be getting higher resolution and frame rates. Especially with that type of game, it's going to play a lot better. But like, the game looks fantastic. It's one of the reasons why I think people shouldn't really worry about if any of these releases are like received poorly, because this year's amazing for games. Like, look what's came out already. The Dead Space remake, Resident Evil 4, Hi-Fi Rush, Age of Empires 2 on Xbox. What else has came out? Whether people like it or not. What is that PlayStation game that came out this year? The Square Enix one.
Oh gosh,
Forspoken.
Forspoken, the 2-year exclusive. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so Forspoken, that released on PlayStation. Whether people like it or not, it's a big game that released. It's a good year for games so far. Hogwarts Legacy, a huge RPG. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which we're going to talk about in a bit. It's a good year for games. So, like, I can't see why people would complain. But anyway, Armored Core 6 looks incredible. It releases this August. It's going to be massive. And for people that are wondering, it's not Dark Souls with mechs. I've seen a lot of people wonder this, even people on places like Reset Era and NeoGAF. Just assume it's Dark Souls with mechs. It's not. You get plonked in a mission. You get told to go to an objective, do objective as a mech, kill mechs with mechs. That's literally all you do in that game. But it's a good game. I think a lot of people are going to have fun with it. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about Star Wars now, because it's been an interesting week. So, now, before I let Logan talk about how much he loves the game, I'll say this. Jedi Fallen Order, released in 2019, the marketing had me worried only on how it would perform, right? I wanted a single-player Star Wars game to be received well and sell well to prove that we can get more Star Wars games. And anyway, the game comes out, had some really good trailers, and then from the year it released, so I think it was like November 2019 to November 2020, it was the second best-selling game in the US of that year, right? Which was incredible, because it was a single-player Star Wars game. It didn't have microtransactions. It didn't have expansions. It didn't have multiplayer. It was a fully single-player action-adventure game, and that was it, right? And even after the game came out, EA didn't market the game that much, at least in the UK. So, like, people didn't really expect it would sell that well, and that game proved to EA that single-player games can make money. So that's why we've seen all these single-player games in development from EA all of a sudden, because now they have faith in single-player games. So anyway, the game comes out. It's amazing. They already said they were working on a sequel, which made a lot of people happy, made me happy. Jedi Fallen Order was my game of the year of 2019. And I've always wondered, like, could the sequel be good? Like, could it be that good? Could it live up to the first game? Could it even be better? And for the longest time I've been, you know what? Even if it's half as good as Jedi Fallen Order, I'll be happy. So anyway, we get a few trailers. The game gets announced at the Game Awards 2022. And in between then and the launch last week, we got maybe 4 trailers, 3 of which were story/gameplay related. And every single time the games looked better and better. So anyway, the game comes out, and I have to say, it's possibly one of the best games I've ever played. I'm about 45% way through or whatever, and I can't find anything wrong with the game. Nothing. Zip all. And every time I'm playing it, I've just got a smile on my face. It fixes all of the issues people had in the first game. The time to respawn after being, killed is next to non-existent now. The map is a lot easier to understand. You can fast travel, which is a big thing in this game. Combat is expanded. The skill tree is expanded. The levels themselves are built even better. The open areas have more variety. The side quests, which don't feel bloated, they actually flesh out the story and flesh out the areas you visit. Every single aspect about this game is better. There's no aspect about the first game that's better than the sequel. That's just a fact. And I'm shocked at how good this game is. Now, I will say this. I'm playing it on quality mode, simply because the game looks so good. And I don't regret it. This game is going to be a lot of people's Game of the Year titles. It's probably going to be mine. At the minute, it's Hogwarts Legacy. But after about 19 hours and 45% into the game, I can't find anything wrong with it, which is shocking. Because normally there's one little thing that can bother me. Maybe the way the UI looks. Maybe there's something in combat that can bother me. But like Jedi Fallen Order, I should say Jedi. I keep wanting to call it Jedi Fallen Order 2, but Star Wars Jedi Survivor is possibly one of the best games ever made. And I'm barely halfway through, which shocks me. Like, Logan, I'll let you talk about this game now because, like, people are surprised by how good this game is.
I went into the game hoping it would be as good as the first one, maybe a little better. And like you, the first one was my game of the year in 2019 when it came out. Phenomenal game. This one improves literally everything from the other one, which was my game of the year when it came out. Like, this one takes like another quantum leap forward, which I didn't even think was possible for this. It is, like I revere Knights of the Old Republic. I am a diehard old school EU, Star Wars junkie for the old lore and the games and all that stuff. And to say that after beating the game and doing all the side quests and pretty much all the collectibles and, skills and, what have you, extra superfluous stuff and the story and everything, I have to say it might just be my favorite game ever now. Like, Knights of the Old Republic has always been, and this one is right there, if not maybe even a little more impactful to me, which would have been blasphemous for me to have said before I played it. It is. I won't spoil the story, but there are things in this campaign and story that will just blow your minds, and you know, like typical Star Wars stuff that you're like, oh my gosh, that just happened, or this changes everything, or I could not have possibly in my wildest dreams foreseen this being what was gonna go down. It, and then the gameplay, like all the skills, like all the lightsaber stances feel so different. Like the crossguard lightsaber, it feels like you're wielding a bloody claymore in battle. Like it is brutal. Like you just beating and just wearing down your opponent. And then you've got your little fencing saber stance, basically with a blaster in your other hand. And then you've got your normal single blade, and then you've got your double blade quarterstaff lightsaber, and then you got dual hand lightsabers, and then it's just and all the powers they build up on what they were before. You don't get anything too insane like Force Unleashed where you're pulling Star Destroyers out of the sky, but it makes sense in the Star Wars world. Like the powers you get and the story, the characters, the worlds, the side quests, everything was just S plus tier. It's incredible. It's my game of the year. And I honestly, like, even if Starfield is incredible, I probably am not going to pick it over this. Like, this is, like, good chance it's my favorite game ever now.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm trying to think how I can put this. Like, Jedi Fallen Order was a Metroidvania. Like, everyone knows that. It's a big old 3D Metroidvania. That's what makes it so good. And, starting this game, one of my biggest concerns was, like, is it going to be one of those things where they take away all your powers at the beginning of the game? Because that happens a lot in sequels, to the point where it's a trope, right? We all thought that. We've talked about that on the show a lot. Like, starting that game that way would really annoy me. And, weeks before launch, the developers were like, no, you have all your powers. So I was thinking, like, how are they going to expand on that? Like, how is the game going to still have that Metroidvania feel? And straight away, in the opening hour, you get given tools to traverse differently. There's things you can do to get past side quests differently. And, like, I don't want to like all the gameplay in today's podcast. There's no spoilers at all, or even gameplay spoilers. But like, they've made possibly one of the best Metroidvania games I've ever played. Like everything you find is useful, and even the collectibles. The collectibles have purpose now. The collectibles in this game are basically currency to buy things for things in the game. Again, not spoiling it, but like they made something so good, and I have to say, like, Respawn's one of the best developers in the business, right? Their first game, Titanfall, changed the multiplayer game for me. It was incredible. Then they came out with Titanfall 2, which has one of the best first-person shooter campaigns, in my opinion. They came out with Apex. As much as I made jokes saying, I would prefer to have, a Titanfall 3 as opposed to a Battle Royale game, the truth is people love Apex. Jedi Fallen Order, their first Star Wars game. People wonder, like, how could a first-person shooter developer make a good, action-adventure game? They proved it. And they just continue to prove themselves. And they have other Star Wars games in development. That's the crazy thing. They're making a Star Wars RTS and a Star Wars first-person shooter. Like, it's mind-blowing how good that studio is. And, the game, like, for people that haven't played it yet, it's a must-purchase game. You can get it on discount on Xbox if you have Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate, and it's worth every penny. Like, I complain and whine a lot on Twitter about how I think there's too many games forcing themselves to be open world to justify the price, right? Like, I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan, and Metal Gear Solid 5 felt bloated, unnecessary in its open world, but the gameplay was great, and I just felt it was forced into an open world to justify its price. And then I'm just playing this, and I'm like, they've made a game that's going to be as long as other open world games without having any repetitive content whatsoever. And there's areas in this game that most people will never find. There's bosses in this game which most people will never find. There's bosses in this game which I accidentally found, which destroyed me straight away. I'll just put it that way. Like, Logan, I'm guessing you got destroyed a lot by a certain hidden boss on the first planet.
Oh, yes. Won't get into spoilers, but I was not expecting to see that thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, it's on. Let's go. And, I eventually realized, you know what? Much like the first time, I'm going to come back when I'm stronger and better, and I will deal with you personally.
Yeah.
And I did. But,
that boss destroyed me more than Mikola in Elden Ring. Like, there's memes about that certain boss right now online because, like, people that have, like, hardcore played Dark Souls and Elden Ring for years, like, have played this game and gotten to that boss and they're just like, no, I'm not doing it. Because, like, it's like, that is a challenge and it's a completely optional boss. And that's the thing about this game. There's so much optional content that you can miss if you're not even bothered to look. Like, this isn't really a spoiler. I'm not even going to spoil, like, the bosses or anything, but there's an area in the first planet where there's a large portion of it ran by battle droids. And it's an area that you don't even have to go to, which is crazy. Before I continue, we have a £2 super chat by Pyro M at D. Says, Logan, hashtag make clan Scarata Cannon Republic Commando. What do you make of that, Logan? I have not played Republic Commando in a long time.
Yeah, we need Republic Commando back ASAP. Like, I have fingers crossed that is what the shooter that Respawn is doing. That it is a sequel to Republic Commando, like have Imperial Commando, or maybe focus on the Rebels, or maybe a reboot of it. But to this day, the best squad AIs, best AIs in gaming I've ever seen were the AI as the Alien in Alien Isolation and your squad AI in Republic Commando. And that was an early 2000s, came out right before Revenge of the Sith, original Xbox game. And it still to this day is that good and that unsurpassed. Like, Love the story, love the characters, the worlds, everything. Please, please make that game for their art for their shooter.
Yeah, once again, thanks Pyro for the £2 super chat. But I think it's got a point. Like, and I think with them making a first person shooter, Republic Commando kind of sticks out, and plus you have the Bad Batch, which is huge at the minute. Like, they could do something in the. By the way, if any developers listen, I really want more Clone Wars era games. Like, I have this really big love for the Clone Wars era at the minute. Like, I want more. But yeah, like, especially, by the way, if anyone listen, if you're a fan of the Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, basically the prequel era, you are gonna love this game. Like, just hearing battle droids talk to each other, like, is funny. Like, there's like tons of jokes in the game. Again, optional content most people will never hear. The reason I think me and Logan sound so giddy about Jedi Survivor, it's because all the time when people are excited about a game, they always get told this, like, you shouldn't get hyped about it. You shouldn't get yourself, overhyped for it because you might be let down. And, like, I say no. Let people be hyped. And this game, it didn't live up to the hype. It bloody exceeded it. And we don't say that often. Elden Ring, hyped for years after a CGI trailer with a lot of promise, and then the game comes out and it's a bloody masterpiece. We don't see that every so often. And again, I hope it does well. And speaking of sales, the first game sold the second best in the US from the year it released. I've talked about this before. Well, the good news, actually, I had a little bit of rant before the show, and I'll mention this now. So you know how people online and fanboys will mention UK boxed sales copies, and I've said to people, stop paying attention to UK sales figures for boxed copies. It doesn't make any sense. Half of our game stores shut down. Hell, we haven't had a video game store where I live for about 12 years. Actually, about 10 years. And I could either buy them off Amazon or buy them digitally. Most people buy them digitally. I've been trying to tell people this. Anyway, so the game comes out, and after the first day, tracking went ahead, and all these analysts start saying, hey, the game isn't selling well because of the launch day UK boxed sales copies. And what happens? A week later, we find out the game is actually selling better than the original, mostly digitally. I've been trying to tell people this for years. Stop paying attention to that UK boxed sales number. It makes no bloody sense. Yet we still have people pushing it. Like, Jedi Survivor selling more, even though it's more expensive, is a good sign, because we need more good single-player Star Wars games to get more good single-player Star Wars games. Thankfully, it looks like it's going to do well. And, I could talk about this game for hours. It's just so good. And I have to talk about performance. So, again, by the way, Logan, what did you play it on? Performance or quality?
Like you, I played it on quality because I'm like, I'm in this Star Wars, euphoria, and this is incredible. It looks incredible. I'm just gonna roll with it, and I had hardly any issues. Like, only a few times that I ever have a few textures look a little janky, but then after a couple seconds they smoothed out, and it was like on rocks or foliage, or like a time or two I had to wait a few seconds for a door to open. That was basically it. And that is not something to even have any qualms about whatsoever.
Yeah, so long story short, the game went live at 5 a.m. UK time. I stayed up to play it. And as soon as I start playing, or if people are just picking up the game, go to the options before you start the game. Film grain, motion blur, and chromatic aberration is on by default. Those three things ruin image quality, in my opinion. But anyway, I had it in performance mode, and it was a bit inconsistent. But once I got to playing the game, I was thinking, you know what, let's see how different the quality mode is. And my jaw hit the floor. You see so much detail in quality mode. I was just like, you know what, I'm 60 FPS all day, but I'm sacrificing that for those visuals. That is a next-gen looking game. it looks incredible. And I think, obviously the game has awful PC performance. I can't really talk about that because I don't game on PC. But like on the Xbox side, the opening area was inconsistent. I will say this: on the other planets, the frame rate's fine. The frame rate's fine. So once you get past the opening area, if you want to go to performance mode, you shouldn't have any issues. Like the first main planet is fairly open. I had no frame rate problems when I went back onto performance mode at all. Again, can't speak for PC. Although I will say this: developers really need to optimize better for PC because every single release we see awful PC versions, and it's just getting, it's just bad. Like we shouldn't be seeing awfully bad ports. And I can't imagine it being easy to optimize for so many different PC variants. But like Logan, you've obviously seen this, right? Like every PC release this year almost has performed like crap.
Yeah, it has been weird just how awful the industry has been the last year and a half at making good PC ports. Like, you have Sony with The Last of Us being an absolute abomination. You have Cyberpunk being like a shredded potato when it launched on PC. You have games that made Arkham Knight look like it was a good port. Like, it has been wildly bad.
Like, I think it's just like I think developers should just maybe take an extra month or so just to see if they can like get the PC version. I know we're an Xbox show, but like it just ain't right. We shouldn't be seeing like awful ports. We should want all these ports to be good. But yeah, other than that, the game's amazing. I could talk about it all day, and I will say this though: like yesterday, I got this comment, saying that they want the next game to be open world, and basically boiled down to justifying its price. And Logan, I think you can agree with me when I say like this game does not need to be open world.
Sorry, I completely zoned out. Which game?
Like Jedi Survivor, or the next one, does not need to go open world because the levels are just so well designed.
Oh yeah, just do exactly what they did here, and it's golden. Like, give me 10 of these games, 100%.
And I have to say, the opening area, which it's no spoiler, it's in the trailers. Coruscant, arguably one of the best looking levels I've ever seen in a video game. Like, my jaw was on the floor. Like, as someone that loves the prequel era a lot, that game hit. That was really nice seeing Coruscant from like a modern AAA standpoint. Like, we don't see that enough in gaming. But yeah, great game. I think more people need to play it. I hope it sells 20 million copies because we don't see games like this a lot. Anyway, Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before I move on?
No, just y'all who haven't beaten it yet are in for a treat. Like, once it's been long enough, I wish we could have a just discussion on the story beats of it. Like, I'm still just, a few days later after beating it, still just sitting here thinking about it. So it's incredible. Just go out there and have fun with it.
Yeah, and speaking of like the size of Shizno, I just noticed in chat said Jedi Survivor is plenty big enough. This is what I mean about the whole map size thing. Like, so the first main planet, I'm going to talk about this game forever. We've still got most of the main topics to talk about, but the first main planet is called Kabor, and I was exploring this thing for maybe 5 hours. Going to, like, there's a little valley area, little forest-ish area, some caves, and I was thinking, surely I'm like getting like 90% of completion. So I went to the settings, and I clicked on Kabor on the map, and it said 38% finished. And I was thinking, how? Like, I collected a bunch of collectibles, the main town area I visited, all the optional areas. Apparently not all of them, but like, it's so well designed, and I just hope we see more of that. Like, I think we need more AAA Metroidvania style games. Maybe just me, but yeah, we'll move on. Again, we're about an hour into the show. If people are enjoying it, like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. Really helps the channel out. Super chats are live if you want anything read out loud and all that stuff. Anyway, so Oh my God, we actually have way too much to cover. You know what? Let's just talk about the ABK stuff now. Um, Now, Logan went missing off Twitter for about a week and a half after this whole thing went down. But it was a mess online. Because for about 2 days beforehand, everyone was getting the impression that it was going to go through. All the people from Microsoft were talking about it like it was going to go through. I thought it was going to go through. I even had memes at the ready. Well, I don't need to post them now, at least for a while. Logan, it went down. It didn't go in Microsoft's favor. What happens next?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Like, what happens next? Basically, they have a few options, and it seems like they've chosen door number one, which is we're gonna fight this sucker. And they have hired the preeminent law firms and people in regards to the British legal system. Microsoft has, and Activision has hired another firm of that ilk to defend on their behalf. And usually, what happens is when regulators vote to block something, they kind of just assume, party's over, move along. We hit the hammer down. Y'all are just gonna have to, go along your merry way and just get over it. You're not gonna get the deal done, and too bad, too sad. Because most companies are not Microsoft or Activision Blizzard and don't have obscene wealth and resources and time and commitment. And frankly, I think they're pissed off and motivated to get this deal done to where they are going all in to appeal this. And so that might mean we're going to have to hear about this for another, I don't even know. It could be a little while. And as annoying as that is, if they get it done and approved and appealed, then great. And there's also the possibility that the EU and they're due the 22nd, I think. They could come out and say, "Yeah, we approve it." And so then you have the UK as a no, and you're appealing it, and then you have the FTC in the US that's a no. But in the US courts, it's extremely likely that the deal would pass through because the legally and all that, it seems very clearly Microsoft's favor. So you could end up in a scenario where it's just the UK being a royal pain about it. And then it's like, well, could we just pay, fine money and say, you know what? We're Microsoft. We're just going to keep on keeping on, and because your thing is ridiculous. And we'll just pay whatever fines and you'll deal. They could do that. They could go, okay, we're just going to, call your bluff, and we'll say we'll just leave the UK. Whether they would do that or not, who knows? But maybe Activision seemed to kind of hint maybe a little bit at that threat, at that looming specter of a possibility in their response after the deal was blocked. So, I mean, I don't think it's theoretically implausible for them to maybe do that. Like, that's the nuclear option, but they could just say, you know what, the heck with it. UK, you don't want us to have this? Well, guess what? You don't get to have us either, and we leave. That's a possibility. Or there's the option that, they're like, well, that sucks. Guess we just can't do it. Or there's, this one I'm less familiar with, but there is a potential option to where maybe theoretically they could have Activision Blizzard independent in only the UK. And then everywhere else it's integrated with Microsoft and Xbox. That's another theoretical possibility. The point is, this thing is not over. As much as some people would love it, and frankly in both camps, like, I think people are sick of this thing. Honestly, you saw Phil on the Kind of Funny podcast interview. Dude looks like he's been hit by a freight train. And he's been dragged through the streets. Like, it has been a rough time. And this thing has taken so much time and energy. Like, my goodness, man. Like, It's still gonna go on for a while, but it's not done, not by a long shot. And don't give up faith that it can still prevail. But I will say, brace yourself for the fact that, the fact that they did block it means there's a decent chance that it just doesn't happen and it's not meant to be. But they can use that money for something else. You can use that time and resources for other things. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Xbox will, be fine. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's gonna be alright. But don't think it's all over. Either way, they can either win this case or they move on. It is not everything is awful. Blow it up, fire everybody, sell the brand, become a third party publisher, and just let all the trolls win. It's not that way.
Yeah, it's been a long process. Like everyone listening, and like we all tired of it. Like here's the thing: it not going through, nothing changes for Xbox gamers. Like if you think about it, like people acting like the sky's falling. It's like right now, Microsoft's relationship with Activision doesn't change. If anything, right, there's no deals in place. Microsoft can still work with Activision. I think that's the big thing people are ignoring. And just because the UK thing didn't go through doesn't mean it's done. Like it's just going to be a longer process, unfortunately. I will say this though: the UK government in general, that's corrupt. Like you just have to look online. Like the whole CMA, like from the get go, we've all seen the posts by them, the defense by them. Like it's their job to protect consumers and competition for consumers. But in the UK, there's no competition, right? PlayStation rule the UK, and the CMA was basically protecting their place in the market, right? The same thing happens with Apple in the UK. Apple's basically protected in the UK. Like, hell, there's this thing we call in the UK called Apple tax. Apple can charge whatever they want for their products with an extreme premium just because, right? And I use an iPhone, right? So like it's not me hating on Apple. It's just the truth. It's a thing over here. So like, the market leaders in the UK are protected. This has been the case for about 15 years or so, because for the longest time the number one console manufacturer in the UK would just change a lot. Sometimes it was Nintendo, sometimes it was Sega, sometimes it was Sony, sometimes it was Microsoft, and it just go back and forth all the time. The Super Nintendo was massive in the US, but the Sega Mega Drive in the UK was bigger, right? The Nintendo 64, massive. Although I think in the UK the PlayStation won that, and then the next generation, the PlayStation 2, the Wii, the next generation after that, sold well, extremely well, but the 360 became number one. And after that, it was the PlayStation 4. Although the 360 is still the best-selling console of all time in the UK. But regardless, the market leader is PlayStation. They have the control. Things will change. And I was going to leave this topic till last, but we still have a lot to talk about. So, I put out a tweet last night, and people may have seen this, on about how if this deal doesn't go through, maybe Microsoft should start doing what Sony does. Paying to get third-party games exclusive. Because I assumed that it's okay now, right? Sony does it all the time. Upcoming Konami games are apparently going to be exclusive to PlayStation. So surely doesn't that mean people are fine if Microsoft does the same thing? Well, I caught some fish. The bait works, and all the replies are public. People can see them right now. There's so many people that do not want Microsoft to do what Sony does because they know it's bad. And every single person picking fault with that post, by the way, I'll be honest, are absolute clowns. Because I worded it very specifically. Microsoft owning Activision and having games multi-platform is bad. But Sony paying for third-party exclusivity is good, apparently. And people just keep mentioning it. It's not good to buy studios and publishers, completely ignoring the multi-platform game releases thing. People do not want Microsoft to do Sony's tactics because they won't get those releases anymore. But they are completely fine with Sony money-hatting third-party games. This has been happening since the 90s. Tomb Raider, massive game. They money-hatted Tomb Raider 2, right? Full-time, lifetime exclusive. They did it for years. Hell, there's a video out, and I think it was like G4 or something in the US, a video out where Sony, when they start getting into the console manufacturing business, they set out to buy exclusivity from all the major Japanese developers. Right? That video's public. People can find it now. And it's been going on for years. But the second people mention Microsoft and exclusivity in the same sentence, people lose their mind. Rise of the Tomb Raider was exclusive for 1 year. And I remember Jeff Keighley was tagging Aaron Greenberg on Twitter saying, hey, is it Lifetime? Is it Lifetime? Hey, tell me, Aaron, is it Lifetime? Like, Logan, you can remember that, right?
Yeah, I remember that. The whole Rise of the Tomb Raider thing is the one Twitter controversy, I guess you could say, I ever got involved in. About there was a preeminent journalist out there, I won't say who had a take about it, about how it was awful and everything's wrong and everything with that. And then basically years later, was praising it when Sony was doing the same thing.
I know who you're talking about.
And yeah. And I'm like, huh. So it's bad and only fanboys and it's toxic benefit from it. When Xbox does it, but when PlayStation does it, it's brilliant and just smart business. I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. And yeah, they don't like it when you bring that up.
Yeah. And the thing is, this goes towards big content creators as well. I will not say the name of the journalist we've just been talking about, but I think people know. But like, look at Angry Joe, right? Huge content creator, millions of followers. When the Tomb Raider thing was announced, he had this video out where he was like spitting on camera, angry, saying, "Oh, what does it get Microsoft if they have 1 year exclusivity?" Yet when Street Fighter V was exclusive, there was no such video. He wasn't angry at all. Perfectly calm Joe, And we've seen this for years. That certain IGN person was angry about Microsoft getting third-party exclusivity for a year. But Sony getting lifetime exclusivity for Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's fine. It's genius. Genius, I tell you. And, it's been going on for years. There's a double standard. If we lived in an ideal world, all games would be on all platforms. We can all agree to that. But every single game that Microsoft doesn't get exclusivity for, they're going to lose it to PlayStation. That's just the reality of the situation. So the latest rumor is, and it's looking very realistic, that the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake and the upcoming, there's going to be a Castlevania new game that are going to be somehow timed exclusive to PlayStation. We've already seen this with Silent Hill 2 remake, and it's not that unrealistic, so it looks like it's probably going to happen. And people are fine with it. Like, look at any of these PlayStation-style content creators. They're bloody hypocrites, right?
It's just the way it works, man.
Yeah, they'll port big Hi-Fi Rush, get angry about Redfall when it was perceived well in previews about a cancelled port. Yet these same people will make content on Twitter saying, "Hey, Metal Gear Solid 4 remaster exclusive PlayStation 5, would you buy it?" Like, hypocrites. And then all these rumors come out about the remakes, and it's fine. And none of these journalists are talking about it. No one's talking about it. It's fine. It's accepted. I'm seeing people talk about it as a positive thing. Yet it's bad if Microsoft... Like, I just hinted at Microsoft maybe doing the same thing. And people were angry. Yet Sony is completely allowed. And this is one of my biggest complaints, right? People say, and I'm looping in the whole Square Enix thing here, because this is going to blow people's minds, because nobody ever talks about this, right? I'll just use Final Fantasy VII Remake as one example. Square Enix, whatever deal they signed with Sony, we all know the situation, right? However, people are forgetting that, let's say Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, that's only ever going to be on PlayStation 5. So people are saying, well, Xbox gamers wouldn't buy it anyway. And here's why that thinking is stupid. They are limiting the amount of copies they can sell way more than people think. And here's why. Let's say there's 30 million PlayStation 5s. Do you believe that them locking themselves into one ecosystem for one console means that they're going to sell 30 million copies? Do you think that every single PlayStation 5 owner is going to go out there and buy Final Fantasy VII Part 2? No, they're not. They're cutting out millions of gamers on Xbox of a household name, a sequel, and a remake, and people are just looking past it. Oh, Xbox guys don't buy Japanese games. Yet Sega plans on releasing more. So do these games sell or don't they? Because if they didn't sell, then we wouldn't get them. Like, it's all over the place. And like, every time I go on Twitter, people say this. People say there's no market for Japanese games on Xbox. Where are they getting this from? Are they getting from all the games that don't get marketed? Because guess what? Sega has plans to bring even more Yakuza games to the platform. Like, I can't be the only one that realizes this. And, you know, back onto the whole, like, Konami thing. Like, why are people okay with this? Because me merely suggesting Microsoft should do the same thing angered people. Yeah, it's okay for complete franchises, complete games to get locked out of Microsoft's gaming ecosystem just because. And, you know, people on Twitter will just reply saying, oh, you know, cry more or whatever, or cope. Like, they can fuck off. Like, why is it okay for one thing and not the other? Why is it okay for Sony to do this for, 25 years and it's fine? Yet the mere mention of it angered people. Like my tweet's still live. People can look at it. Like, people were angry, livid even, at just mentioning it. And, like, I know Phil Spencer, and we'll roll this topic in as well. Like, Phil Spencer recently had an interview with Kinda Funny. And, you know, I will say this, like, I'm surprised an outlet like Kinda Funny would mention something like, you know, Redfall's perception. Like, Logan, did you find that weird? Like, they mentioned, like, you know, normally you don't have an interview with someone high up at a company and mention the bad stuff just out of the gate. And, like, is that just me? Because that seems
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, on the surface it seems weird, but it also, to me, maybe he kind of talked to them ahead of time about, like, hey, you know what? I'm here to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And this was a genius PR move on his part to go, you know what? We screwed up. We royally, bricked this. This was very bad. And things have not been going well lately. The sentiment and emotions are not in our favor. Let me just be a good leader and do what good leaders do and step in front of this and address it head on. And I think that's what he did. I think that's why he went ahead and answered those questions and other questions that were frankly, kind of loaded. And he just was like, "Yeah, we screwed up. Yeah. And I'm sorry and I hope we can fix it. And this did not meet our standard or process and we need to do better." And you know what? Kudos to him for taking it on the chin and being a man and actually going out there and doing that. You don't. It's interesting you don't see other companies whenever they have bad moments have their leadership go out there and face the crowd and face the music and talk about stuff. They're hiding in their ivory towers. Kudos to him for actually going out there. I hope we don't have to have another apology tour after other games come out, but I believe them, and I think they learned that they need to be more hands on, but not to the point of they were in the past. And to me, I'm willing to let the Redfall thing just go. because I think it was a game that was already mostly done by Bethesda. Bethesda joined the Xbox, and they're not still not 100% integrated yet. And by the time that their team was fully aware of just how mishapped this game was, it was a little too late to stop that train. And so they just got it out there, and they'll fix and they'll revise and they'll move forward, and they'll take what they learned from this, be more hands on with their studios going forward. Not stifling creative, but, you know, not being just the absentee, overseer leader that's like, all right, I'll check on you in a month, see how it's going. Like, be a little more hands on than that.
Yeah, and one of the other things that was mentioned, and this angered a lot of people, by the way, where Phil said that Microsoft trying to take the number one spot from PlayStation doesn't really make much sense in the way Sony would do it because people are locked into the ecosystem, and that's true. Like last generation, and like a lot in the UK, a lot of people moved to digital. So like if you have hundreds of games on a platform that you play primarily, you're not all of a sudden going to drop ship and jump ship and buy a different platform and just start buying all your exclusives there. I've been trying to tell people this since the whole ABK deal thing was announced, right? So like just because like Call of Duty would be in Game Pass or whatever, like Joe average gamer wouldn't be like, you know what, my library that consists of FIFA, Call of Duty, GTA, and a bunch of Assassin's Creed games, even those people aren't going to jump ship because they're locked into the platform. Like, I have hundreds and hundreds of games on Xbox. I have no reason to jump ship. And plus, I think it's cringe, by the way, when people announce that stuff on Twitter. Like, drama much. But, like, I don't see people doing that. Like, it makes no sense. Like, Microsoft has to increase their value offering in the platform, be it Xbox itself or Game Pass. For the longest time, people have been saying Microsoft needs more games. They need more publishers, or say more developers, and they've improved on that. Like, think about it. When the Xbox One came out, they had 5 studios, and they didn't even own the Gears IP. Like, it was all over the place, and they're just gonna continue to get better. And like, I think people just read way too much into it, like. Because ever since then, people are like, oh, Microsoft's not going to compete. They want to spend $70 billion on Activision. If that ain't competing, I don't know what is. And from that, we've had the whole Xbox going third-party thing again. And if I were to put out on Twitter tonight, I'm not going to, but if I were to put out on Twitter tonight saying PlayStation should go third-party, just randomly, I would get so much hate. Because they have this like weird like cultish behavior behind it. Like there's this weird love behind PlayStation. Like people pretend that PlayStation has this huge legacy of games over Xbox, but the truth is they had one generation over Xbox, and it was arguably the worst generation because the games from that gen have aged like milk, right? Like absolute crap 3D models at a time where 3D models were crap, let's be honest. And people just like have this weird love for PlayStation. And I live in the UK where it's just been all over the place, right? Like as a kid, people were Nintendo, Sega, Sony, whatever. But no matter what Xbox does, people are just not going to give them the slack, right? Like the thing is, you can commend Phil Spencer for is that they admit to the mistakes, yet people wanting Phil Spencer to leave, which blows my mind. Like, are they new to gaming? Remember, like, Xbox wasn't going to be a thing almost a decade ago. The Xbox One came out, like, they were this close. People can't see me. But they were this close to shutting the whole thing down. It boggles my mind that people are just okay with it. Like, really think about it. If Microsoft went out of business today, for Xbox, should I say, and quote-unquote went third-party, do people really want that? Where PlayStation's the only one making a premium console? Like, they could pretty much dictate prices in the market. They could charge $150 for a game if they wanted because they'd be the only console to play the games on. But no, people just pretend that that's not an issue. And you can see it every day. Like, I was talking about the third-party thing about 10 minutes ago. Like, people want Sony to have all the games, and they don't want Xbox to have anything. That's been the case for the longest time. Like the mere fact of me mentioning it angered people, and we're gonna see this continue. Like, and even though we know this rumor now, right? Whenever this Konami thing's announced or if it's on a PlayStation showcase. By the way, Logan, you've probably noticed this as well. People are predicting a PlayStation showcase every month, every single month. Like,
Well, that's what happens when you starve your fan base and don't give them any information at all. It's like, say what you want about Xbox's communication and how it's been hit or miss, and maybe some things have been less than accurate, but at least they're out there talking. Like, it is crickets from PlayStation right now.
like almost. Oh, by the way, that this is in the For You section on Twitter, where I'm seeing posts by people I don't follow or have any interest in following, where PlayStation Showcase is going to be insane. It's going to be the best thing ever. Based on what? Like, oh, there's going to be a PlayStation Showcase next month. What, they've been predicting this for 18 months. Shut up. It's just annoying. I see this in my feed every day. Like, people are predicting. I call it the broken clock is right twice a day approach. They're going to guess a PlayStation Showcase every month until they eventually write. And then when they are, they're going to say, hey, told you so, and do the whole insider bullshit with the sidey face. We all see that crap. Like, it's noticeable. Anyway, bit of a rant. But yeah, Phil Spencer did a great job. He clearly is annoyed by the whole thing because, being asked those questions has been, it's been pulled apart by people. And then you have the Activision thing, like, people just want this to be over. It's all over the place, let's be honest. I will say this, we will never see that style of interview from Jim Ryan. Ever.
Fluff pieces only.
Yeah, it's just fluff pieces, and like his demeanor. He's purely a businessman. Like, when do we ever hear about Jim Ryan talk about games he's played? Or does anyone ever see him online playing anything? Other than talking about why people wouldn't want to play old Gran Turismo games because they look terrible. That was something he said about backwards compatibility. But yeah. I don't like the demeanor from like certain PlayStation executives, but Phil Spencer, like, he's crystal clear up front, and I think, like, rather than these places like GameSpot and all that crap, like, tearing apart that interview and being really unprofessional about it, they need to look back and think like Xbox was on the brink. They've came a long way, and I don't think people overreacting about the Redfall thing are taking it as in like, this should be the end of Xbox. And I guarantee you this, whenever the Konami thing's announced or the PlayStation Showcase happens, even though it's a rumor now, people are going to say, why couldn't Xbox get these deals? We know this is going to happen because it happens with every exclusive Microsoft loses. It's because people have this assumption that it's a bidding war. It's not. It doesn't work like that. like, Logan, have you noticed this? Like, every time an exclusive thing pops up, people always say, why didn't Microsoft approach them first? When Konami and things like Square Enix have huge ties with PlayStation, but people just look past that.
Yeah, I mean, a business relationship is between two or more entities, and it's a mutual agreement, and like, a company can say, you know what, I'm not too big a fan of that company, or I don't want to make a deal with that company. I want to make a deal with this company, and they just go and they do it. They shake hands and it's done, and that's the deal. Like, Konami can choose who they want to do business with and make exclusive deals with. We can get mad all we want at Sony for doing this, which it sucks and I hate it, but it is what it is. But these publishers play a part in it. They're the ones that making the money grabs and making the deals with these companies. Like, if they wanted to, they could make a deal with somebody else. It's who's to say it is because Xbox didn't put up enough money? I don't think it is that simple. I don't think it's simply that Xbox was like, we don't want to pay for it. You guys go ahead. Like, I don't. To me, it's not that simple, and I think it's just simply these companies are doing business with people have long track records with, or they're seeking a specific thing for a deal. And it could be just Xbox's phone's not ringing. Like they're just not calling them. And they're just doing these deals and then Xbox finds out like we do. Or, who knows? But I don't think it's as simple as Xbox, offered 150 versus PlayStation offering 170. Something like that, as an example. I don't think it's that simple.
I think most people think that's how it works. Like you have an executive from Sony, an executive from Microsoft doing a bidding war, raising a paddle in the air, like for like, okay, who wants Silent Hill 2? Do you want 150 million? Who's got 155 million? Doesn't work like that. Like, but people just think it does. Like, why couldn't Microsoft outbid them? It doesn't work like that. It'd be funny if it did, but it doesn't work like that. Um, we move on. We've got a lot to talk about. Okay, Starfield. Starfield, easily one of the most anticipated games in a long time because it's the new big Bethesda RPG, a brand new
Has
IP.
to be an 11 out of 10, Jamie. Has
Yeah,
to be.
yeah. There's this. I've noticed ever since Redfall came out, and I hate this discourse that Starfield has to be the best game ever made because I've seen like huge channels, media outlets say this, that like just because of Redfall, and people acting like Redfall's the worst game ever made. Like, come on, man. Like, it didn't live up to some people's expectations, yet Starfield has to make up for it by being the best game ever made. It has to be a 10 out of 10. It has to be 100 on Metacritic. I don't even think there's any game with 100 on Metacritic. Um, and like I've seen it all over the place. Even fans going, "Hey, we need Starfield to make up for this." Like, stop doing this comparison thing. And anyway, so people start to like calm down over the past few days. Eventually, finally, and the ESRB rating comes out. Now, as someone that goes over to ESRB a lot, one particular thing was mentioned in there. Before I get into the details, one particular thing was mentioned: in-game purchases. Right now, people start flipping out. Certain people made clickbait. Really, like, we all know, people that cover gaming, that single player games have that in the ESRB description. Why? Because things like optional content down the line that needs to be in the ESRB rating. Excuse me. Things like pre-order incentives that needs to be included. Pick your favorite single player game at the minute. Go to ESRB. There's a pretty high chance it has in-game purchases in the description because it has to. Things like Hogwarts Legacy, right? There's pre-order content for the deluxe edition. It has to have that listed on the website. Yet some people and some media outlets were running with Starfield loaded with microtransactions, question mark. Come on now. That's just clickbait. We all know, if anything, outside of being clickbait, you're being disingenuous to your fan base, gamers, and you also expect them to be dumb, which is the worst insult of them all, because everyone knows that that means nothing. And also something like Starfield will have, the creator store, whatever you call it, the modern system for Starfield, much like, Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Like, people clickbaiting that, stupid. Absolutely stupid. Like, any game, like I think even The Witcher 3 has that as well. Like, Logan, the whole microtransaction thing, honestly, quickly and overly like exaggerated, right?
Yeah, like it to me it like is like you said, like pre-order content or leaving it, open to where, DLCs and expansions will come in, or, like off the top of my head, I could totally see a world where there's creator content or, custom ship stuff you can buy, for your space vehicles and like all this other stuff, like as a completely optional thing. Like, and so they put it in the ESRB description. I don't, you know, Starfield, unless I'm tripping, doesn't strike me as a pay to win type game. So I don't think it's gonna be some huge gambling like Diablo Immortal like loot system like controversy type game. Like it's completely overblown, ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Diablo Immortal, there's people that are remortgaging the houses just so they could buy more packs, gems or whatever you call it. Like, that game is loaded. But, like, this is a single player game. Why are people losing this? Like, are they getting upset about horse armor? What are we going to get horse space armor? That'd be pretty cool, actually.
I
But
hope so.
yeah, but but it's not the same situation. Like, I always forget what their creator store is called for mods. The creators something. Anyway, but there's obviously going to be mods for it, and obviously every single Bethesda single player RPG has expansions. It's obviously going to have expansions. Overly blown out of proportion, but anyway, the interesting things from the ESRB, I should say the rating, really didn't have anything to do with in-game purchases. So this is the list of them. Human, robot, and alien enemies. We all knew that. Futuristic guns, lasers, axes, and explosives. I'm wondering what a futuristic axe is like. Sex is confirmed. Like, obviously. I'm trying to think how I can word this so it's okay with this website we're using the podcast on at the minute. A fictional use, or I should say a use of fictional narcotics. I'm trying my best to dance around certain words here.
Yeah, that's been in all of them since like Fallout 3.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and like it's not even like what you would consider like today's standard. They have to call it that because it's something that gives an effect or a defect on something, and so they label it as such. But that's what it's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like in Fallout 3, you could get addicted to something. I think it was called Radex. It was to get rid of radiation. That's been a thing in their games for years. Like, I don't know why people are surprised. Although people have, people have found listings to Sexton Zero G and Sexton on jetpacks. Like, okay, like I don't know what we're meant to do with that information. Like, they haven't shown us anything yet. Although I will say this game is blatantly not going to be allowed in Australia. Like, unless they change a lot, I can't see this game releasing in Australia. I believe Fallout 3 had the same issue. If anyone chat lives in Australia, please let me know. Let me know on Twitter, because I know in Australia and in Germany, a lot of these things aren't allowed in video games. I think Fallout 3 was only released recently over there. But yeah, this is what I expected from a Bethesda game, especially when we have a wide variety of planets and civilizations. Like, there's multiple different colonies and stuff. There's obviously going to be some fictional use of narcotics. That's the best I can describe it. But yeah, it's expected. Like, I don't know what I'm surprised that people seem surprised by this. But yeah, clickbait. And by the way, I really need to rant about this, and I mentioned on Twitter why people really want to pay attention to the show. I hate clickbait. I absolutely hate it. And as
it's the lowest form of just yeah.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, I know how the YouTube game works. If you put out clickbait with a shocked face, maybe put a little highlight around you, bright letters, that is what helps the YouTube algorithm. I hate doing that stuff, right? I do not appear in thumbnails yet. I will be in the not too distant future, but like, I can't stand clickbait. I'm sacrificing views every time I put out a video because I don't do the clickbait thing. Because it's horrible. Like, it's cringeworthy. I cannot stand it. Like, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and then dislike one thing and put out that content, and you're being disingenuous to people. And the amount of people that are just pushing this all of a sudden, like the microtransactions thing, and it's tiresome. Like, the amount I opened Twitter an hour after that thing went live, and people already had clickbait content out. And I get it. People want the most amount of money they can get out of a YouTube video, but like, I can't stand it. It's kind of scummy at this point, putting out disingenuous content. It is at this point. It's really disingenuous. Because again, if you take something like God of War Ragnarok, it's a single player game. There's no microtransactions. but it has in-game purchases listed on ESRB, and that really ticked me off the wrong way because it's the norm now. You know, if you have pre-order content, chances are it has that in the description. We all know that, and especially if people cover gaming, they know that. But no, clickbait. We have to get clickbait. And it's like, my videos would do a lot better, by the way, if I clickbaited them. Like, but I'm not going to do that because it's stupid and it's cringeworthy. And yeah, just saying that all over Twitter today really pissed me off. It really did. We'll move on to the last topic, and that being Microsoft actually has their summer showcase announced. And it's going to be on the 11th of June. And it's going to be a kind of a triple showcase. So there's going to be Xbox Games Showcase, there's going to be the Starfield Direct, and then 2 days later, we're going to have a Showcase Extended event, much like we had last year and the year before. I think people should be excited because it's been a long time since Microsoft's last show. Actually, when was Microsoft's last show? Was it E3? Like the summer show?
Gosh, it's been a minute. I know they had the one in January. Remember, because Hi-Fi Rush, Shadow
Yes,
Drop.
yes. Outside of the small ones, but it's been a while, and the summer showcase in general is like something we've always had for years, where it's a big event. It doesn't matter if it's E3 or whatever; it's where all the games are shown. And we finally have the showcase notes. Or the date. I'm all over the place today. Logan, are you expecting anything in particular? Because people are doing predictions and stuff, and I figured we get some stuff out now, a month in advance before the leaks happen.
One game I would, obviously Starfield's going to be at its direct, but besides that one, I'm going to say HellBlade 2 I would lock as showing up. Like, put it this way, if it didn't show up, I would say that would be a massive, alarm bells going off. I think HellBlade 2 is going to be there. There's a decent chance you could see Avowed there. I think it's well past time that Compulsion finally, opens the box and lets people see what's, what they've been working on. I think there's a good chance you see what Compulsion's working on. Maybe what In Exile's working on, maybe one or more of their projects. Then there's, gosh, let's see, Avowed. I don't know. Maybe Avowed. I still think Fable is one of those games that needs, kind of like Starfield, needs its own space. At this point, it has been built up and expectations, and it's been a long, long time since we've had a Fable game, or a Fable update for that matter. So I think Fable itself is going to be one that kind of gets its own, beat around it. And then as for Perfect Dark, I could see it, but personally still think it's a little soon for that one. What about you, man?
Uh, I think they open up with Ninja Theory and Hellblade 2. I think that game comes out in November. It just seems like it's been long enough. They announced the console with that game. So I think, they open up the show with that. I think the closer will be Avowed within a release date of early 2024. My God, the years are going on. Fable, I honestly don't know. Because we keep seeing like listings for people helping with creative directing and stuff. Like, I think Fable is a while off. I think they were just letting us know, hey, Fable is coming, and that's that. I don't think we'll hear. I think you are right. It's been long enough for the developers of We Happy Few. I forgot the name. Or Compulsion Games. I think we will see that game. There's also a game by Avalanche called. My God, Logan, what was Avalanche's game called? Contraband. Right, that's it. It's been a long day, people. But Contraband, like that game was announced a long time ago. Forza Motorsport, we need a release date for that. That is still meant to come out this year. Indiana Jones. Now, here's the thing about Indiana Jones. Like, Wolfenstein 2 came out a while ago. And even though apparently they've been working on Wolfenstein 3. Pete Hines has loosely hinted at it. So you've got to wonder, do we get the Wolfenstein 3 before Indiana Jones? I think so. I do think so. I will say this, though. If we do get Indiana Jones shown at the event this year, I think people are going to be angry when they see it. Because for some reason, people assume it's third person. For whatever reason. And I honestly believe Indiana Jones is going to be first person. That's what Machine Games does. That's their forte. That's just what they do. I think there's going to be some surprises because at the interview Phil Spencer had, he did say that there will be surprises. And he mentioned collections of games, the term collections of games. My brain automatically went Gears collection, but I think he may have well just been talking about games in general. I do think there will be some Japanese games there. You know, I think like the Persona rumors this year have been all over the place. So Persona 6 and Persona 3 remake have been the rumors. I'm leading to believe the rumors in general. However, I think Persona 6 on the Xbox stage would go down a treat. Because Sega is apparently happy with the performance of the series on Xbox. So to have Persona 6 there would be a huge get. Even if it's just like the announcement, not necessarily marketing. I think it would be a huge get for them. I don't think we see Square Enix at all. Obviously a bunch of Game Pass stuff. But you have to remember, there's been a bunch of games in the past year that have been announced and have a release date within 1 year apart. So I think we're going to see a bunch of new third-party games at this showcase. But outside of that, I think it's going to be a really good showing. I really do. None of this like hold your expectations crap. None of that stuff. I think people should be excited. It's been a long time coming, and you know, obviously the big one for me, Ninja Theory. Like I'm 100% convinced they're going to open the show with HellBlade 2. Like 100% believe it, and close with Avowed. Like that's my main prediction. But yeah. Logan, have you got anything else to add? Because like we're getting late in the show.
I mean, maybe State of Decay 3 gets a little update, a teaser, because that came out. You know, its reveal was around the same era as Fable and all those other ones when they were teased. So I wouldn't be shocked if we finally see something related to that. And then, you know, there's several independent projects that, you know, have been teased over the years, like Project Belfry, which is, you know, by Banner Saga devs in, you know, Austin, Texas. And then you've got, you know, that rumored Wu-Tang game from Brass Lion in New York. And you've got several other smaller projects. Maybe some of those are sprinkled in there. Wouldn't shock me. All I know is I think that they've taken the heat. They've cranked it up. They've dusted themselves off and they're ready to roll. And I think they're pissed off and they're motivated and embarrassed, frankly. So those are powerful motivators, and I think this is going to be a really good show.
Yeah, I think it's a time for people to be excited. Again, it's going to be the big one for the year, and man, it's going to be a good year. Like the year's already been good for gaming. I think it's just going to get even better. And plus, we need release dates for a lot of games coming. Like not just Microsoft, but just in general. And you know, people will be angry about Microsoft no matter what they do. But if you look at them versus the competition, Microsoft already have a ton of games announced. Whereas, like, look, we have to mention PlayStation at this point. Like, there's one game announced for PlayStation this year, like by first party, and that's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Although I do think that will release this year, but outside of that, there's no other release dates mentioned. There's no other games announced. So, like, Microsoft, we know what's coming. There's Contraband, all the licensed titles, the bunch of Game Pass stuff, Indiana Jones, Fable, Perfect Dark, all that stuff. Like, I think people need to sit back. Maybe don't overreact. It's going to be a good year. It's going to be a good year for everyone, especially on Xbox, because we actually know there's a lot of games coming. Anyway, we're about 2 hours into the show. We're actually going to have to put maybe 8 of these topics into next week's show. It's been great. No porn bots whatsoever. Everyone in chat has been awesome today. No fighting. Again, I honestly say this, not just because I can, or just because I really want to. I have the best chat. This is the best chat on YouTube. Nobody argues. It's all good. It's respectful conversation, especially when Twitter at the minute, it's just a bunch of nonsense and people arguing constantly and saying "corp" in every other sentence. But yeah, Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
No, just you know, even though things might not look the best at times and right now for the brand and for, gaming or whatever, just, things are going to get better. They're getting better. They're progressing. It's a temporary step and things are really looking up, heading forward, and this is going to be a big one. So look forward to it for sure and stay positive even when there's a hive mind negative mentality that's kind of been rampant lately, even from some folks you kind of just don't expect it to come from. So just, relax. It's all good. Now, everything's good. Kind of put ABK on the back burner for a while. Like, it's been forefront for a long time. Well, it's still going to be going on, but it's more of one of those like you just have a tab for it and you check in every once in a while kind of thing. Like just focus on the games going forward and things are going to be good, man.
Yeah, and when it comes to coverage on the podcast, we will be toning down the Activision thing because there probably won't be any big updates for that for a while. Fortunately, we head into the summer game season where there's a new announcement every week. Anyway, everyone in chat's been awesome. We'll be back at the same time next week. Hopefully, we'll have another video out by the next show. My last video was about 10 games coming to Xbox this month. Funny enough, 9 of those games release after the 20th. It's a weird month for releases where literally everything releases after the 20th. But yeah, the link for that video is in the description down below. Took a while to make. Hope people enjoy it. Again, we'll be back at the same time next week. We are out. Peace, everybody.